Facts about Tasmanian tigers. The Tasmanian tiger, also called Tasmanian wolf and thylacine, was neither a tiger nor a wolf, but a marsupial, and closely related to the Tasmanian devil. The last known Tasmanian tiger died in 1936, but hundreds of unconfirmed sightings have spurred investigations into whether the animal still lives. Extinction marked the demise of the only member of its family, thylacine, and the world's largest marsupial, pouched carnivore. Tasmanian tigers were 2 inches long, and the tail to its length, 15 to 30 kilograms, according to Encyclopedia Britannica. Tasmanian tigers looked like dogs with yellowish fur. They had black stripes across the body, and a thin, almost rodent-like tail. Habitat. Fossil evidence suggests that the modern thylacine, Thylacinus cynocephalus, whose name means dog-headed pouched one, once widespread across Australia. The animal disappeared everywhere except Tasmania about 2,000 years ago, according to the National Museum of Australia, NMA. The disappearance was likely due to competition with dingoes. Modern people discovered the animal in Tasmania, thus its name. Habits. While it had a vicious appearance, Tasmanian tigers were actually very timid and could be captured without a fight. They would often die suddenly, perhaps from going into shock, according to the Australian government. Researchers think that Tasmanian tigers located prey by scent and hunted, for the most part, at night. They would hunt alone or with a partner. They were mostly quiet creatures, but when hunting, they would make a yapping noise, much like a small dog, according to the Tasmania Parks and Wildlife Service. Diet. Tasmanian tigers were meat eaters. They hunted kangaroos, sheep and wallabies, reportedly, though there is little research into the eating habits of these animals. These animals could open their mouths almost 90 degrees, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica. However, a study in the August 2011 Journal of Zoology found that the Tasmanian tiger wouldn't have been able to kill large prey because of its weak jaw. The authors thought that the animal would have hunted for small marsupials like wallabies and possums. Offspring. Like other marsupials, Tasmanian tigers had pouches. Their pouches opening faced their hind legs, though. In her pouch, a female could carry 2 to 4 hairless babies at once. As the babies grew, the pouch expanded to accommodate them. After the babies became older, the mother would leave the young in a lair, such as a cave or hollowed log, to go hunting. Thylacines likely lived 5 to 7 years in the wild, though they lived up to 9 years in captivity. Classification. Taxonomy. Here is the taxonomy information for the Tasmanian tiger, according to the Integrated Taxonomic Information System, ITIS. Kingdom. Animalia subkingdom. Bilateria infrakingdom. Pterostomia phylum. Chordata subphylum. Vertebrata infraphylum. Gnathostomata superclass. Tetrapoda class. Mammalia subclass. Theria infraclass. Metatheria order. Dasyuromorphia family. Thylacina genus. Thylacinus species. Thylacinus cynocephalus. Extinct or not. It is estimated there were around 5,000 thylacines in Tasmania when Europeans settled in the area, according to National Museum Australia. In 1830, the Van Diemen's Land Co. introduced bounty on the animal, and in 1888 the Tasmanian Parliament placed a bounty of £1, (1.25) on thylacines, according to the Tasmania Parks and Wildlife Service. The last wild Tasmanian tiger was killed between 1910 and 1920. In 1936, the last known thylacine, named Benjamin, died in captivity in the Mris Zoo in Hobart, Australia. This was just 2 months after the Australian government made the animal a protected species. The International Union for Conservation of Nature lists Tasmanian tigers as extinct. However, there have been hundreds of sightings of the Tasmanian tiger over the last 100 years or so. In fact, some of the latest sightings have spurred an investigation into their current existence. Other facts: a research team at the Australian Museum launched the thylacine cloning project in 1999 to attempt to clone a Tasmanian tiger. The research team obtained tissue samples from a female thylacine that had been preserved in alcohol for over 100 years. They were able to extract DNA, and by 2002, they had replicated individual genes. However, in 2005, researchers determined that the quality of the DNA was too poor to work with, and the project was scrapped. The controversial quest to bring back the Tasmanian tiger. Nearly a century after it was wiped out, this unique animal has become a prized symbol of Australia and a target for de-extinction. The Tasmanian tiger is alive. Not literally alive. There hasn't been a verified sighting of Australia's iconic marsupial predator for close to a century, but alive in imagination, in memory, in cultural recognition, and in collective regret over its extinction. Alive, too, in the quest of a handful of scientists and entrepreneurs to de-extinct the species and bring it back to the wild. The first thing to say about the Tasmanian tiger is that it wasn't a tiger and it didn't live only in Tasmania. In its existence as in its demise, the animal also known as the thylacine was a victim of European misunderstanding and error. The Dutch explorer and navigator Abel Tasman spawned the tiger meme. In his search for exploitable southern lands in 1642, Tasman fetched upon the eastern shores of the island he called Van Diemen's Land, later renamed Tasmania in his honor but also known by its traditional Aboriginal name, Lutruwita. A party of Tasman's sailors looking for fresh water saw the footprints of creatures having claws like a tiger. Europeans pinned various names to the animal: zebra opossum, marsupial wolf, Tasmanian dingo out of colonial prejudice as much as ignorance. Northern Hemisphere mammals were considered superior in every way to Australian marsupials that early observers deemed helpless, deformed and monstrous works of nature. Today's much-loved koala was derided as uncouth, awkward and unwieldy, and the thylacine, the world's largest marsupial predator to survive into modern times, was dismissed as a primitive scavenger, brutish and stupid. It was a short step from misnaming and maligning the native wildlife to seeking its replacement with introduced varieties. This colonial fervor led to an ecological makeover from which Australia hasn't recovered. The thylacine's extinction is a symbol of that folly. Here's what we lose when an animal goes extinct. At least 5 thylacine species once existed. The last to survive was the so-called modern thylacine, which at one time inhabited the entire Australian continent as well as the island of New Guinea. About 3,000 years ago this species disappeared from the Australian mainland. No one is sure why, but a changing climate and competition with the recently introduced dingo are the likely causes. Return of the tiger. The thylacine, or Tasmanian tiger, was once the world's largest carnivorous marsupial and Tasmania's top predator, keeping its ecosystem in balance. But Europeans who settled Australia in the 1800s branded the animals a threat to the sheep industry, and a bounty program drove thylacines to extinction. Now scientists are trying to bring the species back to life. Thylacine. Shoulder high. Former range. Thylacines roamed Australia until they went extinct there some 3,000 years ago. Only a Tasmanian population, isolated by rising sea levels, survived. New Guinea. Shoreline. 14,000 years ago. Australia. Thylacine range. Tasmania. Monica Serrano, NGM staff. Lawson Parker. NGM maps. Sources. Andrew Pask, Tigger Lab, University of Melbourne. Ben Lamb, Colossal Biosciences. Robert Paddle, The Last Tasmanian Tiger. CR. SCOTUS, Paleomap Project. Only the Tasmanian population of thylacines remained, marooned on Lutruwita since sea level rise submerged the land bridge to the mainland some 10,000 years ago. But what might have been the animal's sanctuary became, instead, their death camp. Despite scant evidence that thylacines caused significant stock losses, sheep ranchers made them a scapegoat. The native tiger was demonized as a blood-drinking sheep killer, and in 1888 a bounty was approved. Over the next 2 decades, thousands of thylacines were trapped, shot, and poisoned by shepherds and hunters. The bounty program succeeded. By the early 1900s, thylacines were so scarce that payouts dwindled and then ceased. Calls for the animal's protection came too late. In 1986, with no confirmed sightings in the wild for 56 years, the thylacine officially was declared extinct. Rejected that verdict. At one time it was estimated that 1 in 3 Tasmanians had a true tiger sighting story. But as the decades pass and a more than $1 million reward offered in 2005 for conclusive evidence of the thylacine's existence goes unclaimed, the species extinction becomes ever more certain and ever more regretted. Australian Museum Chief Scientist Chris Helgen, a mammalogist and National Geographic explorer, has examined thylacine specimens in most museums that have them. He has measured some 500 thylacine skulls and speaks of the animal with a mixture of reverence and awe. "It blows me away how big they were," he told me. This animal was one of the dominant predators in continental Australia for most of its lifespan as a species. Even more impressive than the thylacine's role as an apex carnivore is where the species sits in the evolutionary pantheon. The thylacine was the last member of its own family, Helgen said. That's profound when you think about a mammalian family. Bears are a family, giraffes are a handful of these families. Kangaroos, sugar gliders, ringtail possums, all the other marsupial carnivores. The thylacine wasn't part of any of these groups. It was deeply unique, extremely ancient, and played out.